You can't hear me? Good evening. I'm John Lyon from the University of Pittsburgh, where our motto is brains of steel. I have the pleasant task of introducing two very distinguished speakers tonight who are going to be speaking in praise of this conference and its history. Well, praise and blame, but I predict that there will be more praise than blame. Whereas I will be speaking in praise of the two distinguished speakers who will be speaking in praise of the conference and its history. Now, this places me in a meta-epidictic situation. And quite honestly, I really didn't know what the rules of decorum were for a meta-epidictic. And I went to the literature, and I honestly didn't find very much. Well, Condit had an article. But what I was specifically looking for was something about the rules of decorum for a meta-epidictic discourse. And so finally I decided to consult an expert on decorum. And it went so well that I've taken the liberty of inviting this person to share the podium and participate in the introduction. So please. Won't you welcome Professor Hugo Hackenbush.
Hugo Hackenbush.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hackenbush, for being here tonight. Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for not checking my credentials too closely. Well, a horse doctor is still a doctor after all, right? Yes, well, your erudition is so extensive that I hardly know where to begin, but I would like to begin with this idea of decorum in a meta-epidictic situation. And perhaps we could, is your mic working okay there? Yeah, okay, yeah. Perhaps we could begin with the definition. Do you have some standard definition that you use for decorum? Well, it's not really all that easy. In fact, it's kind of hard to put your finger on it. And if you do put your finger on it, you won't get invited back. Well, perhaps we could approach this via negativa. Via negativa, oh yes, what a star she was. Not much of an actress, though. Well, perhaps decorum is one of those things that's best recognized in the breach. Well, that's quite possible. I've spent my whole career breaching decorum. You might say I'm drawn to decorum like a candle is drawn to a moth. Yes, well, that raises an interesting question. If you regularly breach decorum, doesn't this have the effect of undercutting decorum itself? I wouldn't worry too much about that. Decorum's always too big for its breaches. And by the way, what am I being paid for this gig? I don't know. In fact, I don't think there's an honorarium at all. John, where's John's food? Is there an honorarium? No. Well, will you reimburse me for parking? Well, that's a start. And by the way, I'm double parked, so you can reimburse me twice. Okay, let's talk a bit about your. Oh, I see what was happening. You were exemplifying a breach of decorum. I understand. Yes, I was exemplifying, and exhilarating, and ravishing by the moonlight. Well, okay, let's talk a bit about your background now. I understand that you studied abroad. Some things even I won't stoop to. I studied on the continent at Heidelberg. Oh, you studied at Heidelberg. No, Heidelberg, as you prefer. And I think you also studied in Paris at the Sorbonne. That's right. Our motto was hard theory and Sorbonnes. All that enfilage, you know. Did you, by any chance, work with Deleuze and Guattari at the Sorbonne? No, I worked with Brie and Chablis. Korean Chablis. I don't think, oh, I'm sure you're familiar with her work. Their most recent book is a brilliant piece of post-structural analysis. Oh, post-structural analysis of what? Well, that's always the question, isn't it? Isn't it? All right, let's bracket that question for now, if you don't mind. All right, but you know what they say, if you bracket, you bought it. Okay. Let's talk about this conference, which is a conference on public address. On what? On public address. Public address. Address. Well, knock yourself out, but you're not going to look very good in it. I think you're being deliberately impossible here. Well, I may be hard to get, but I'm not impossible. Okay, very good. This is the 10th biennial conference, and so it's a kind of milestone moment. So I understand, and if I might say, for a group so forward-looking as this, I'm a bit surprised that this is the first time that you've been addressed by a ventriloquist American. You know, Howdy Doody gets all the cultural studies gigs. But he was a pioneer. He gave voice to wooden Americans everywhere. And you know who you are. So, decorum, please. I agree entirely. My sincerest apologies to anyone who may have felt singled out by that last remark. Okay, that's very good. Now, you were saying Howdy Doody gets all these gigs. Well, that's right. He was a pioneer, and you know, he had that cowboy thing going back from the start. You know, he was doing Brokeback Mountain before it was broke. If you know what I mean. No, I don't know what you mean. You know what I mean. Are you suggesting something about Howdy Doody's sexual orientation? Where were you at sexual orientation? I looked everywhere and you were no place to be found.